In life sometimes things happen that you just don't understand. A wide open plain and blue sky outside the window, a small town in the distance, guests entering through Main Street, and she woke up in a child's body overnight. It was an unlucky day for her. She dropped and broke her new phone on the street and she went home and cried herself to sleep. When she woke up, she was in the body of a 6-year-old. Outside the window was not the familiar urban landscape with tall buildings, but an unreal landscape that could only appear in a fantasy novel, and she was asking what it was. She suddenly shouted and asked where she was, and she hated the place and wanted to take her back home. The maid was telling her to calm down. She can't use her smartphone or eat her favorite tteokbokki. It was a world completely different from her own. At first, she was scared and hated it. She used to pray to God that if that was a dream, please let her wake up quickly. A few days ago, everything changed. On an unusually bright moonlight night, she had somehow managed to escape. As if it was fate, she met her favorite character from a novel, the love of her life. Melkiade Rexia Ruzel Rehel, the infamous tyrant of the northern empire of Lechel, the bloodless, tearless villainous boss of the novel Winter Without Light. Normally, she wasn't interested in web novels, but that one made her start reading them in real time. He was her favorite character who made her suffer and wait for the sequel. Of course, her favorite Melkiade was a little older, but no matter how he looks, he was her favorite. She was thinking of meeting such a character in person as expected, but there was only one conclusion. That it was the world of the novel Winter Without Light. And she clearly possessed the protagonist of the tragic novel, Saint Priscilla. She was reincarnated as the female protagonist, but it was a tragic novel, and she will finally meet her favorite character, but she can't accept that. While she was thinking, all of a sudden her personal maid told her not to do that again, and how many times she had told her that it was dangerous and what if she was to fall off. And she was Luciana, the personal maid of the saint. She looked at Luciana and she was thinking that Luciana was angry. She suddenly smiled and Luciana said that her smile won't work on her anymore. Priscilla was mesmerizing that she was sure Luciana would fall for it until yesterday, and Luciana was getting stronger and she was not falling for her cuteness anymore. And then Luciana told her not to look out the window in such a dangerous position again and asked if she did understand. Priscilla answered yes, and Luciana took a deep breath and told her to come with her and she will get ready, and asked if she knew it was a big day, right? The 12 elders of Bias welcomed her and said that she was cute as ever. May the blessings always be with her always, and it was a shame that she was going away, but customs were customs, so there's nothing they can do. The Pope named Raphael welcomed her and she answered yes to the Holy Father. The Pope laughed and asked her if she knew what day it was, and Priscilla answered yes. And she was saying in her mind that of course she does, and today was the day that Priscilla chooses her family. All saints must leave the church in order to see the world before returning, so they must choose a family to care for them until they reach adulthood. The problem was, the family selection process was completely random. The original Priscilla ruined her life by meeting the wrong family. They were scumbags who took advantage of and abused young children, and they fed her lots of sweet potatoes at the beginning of the novel. So if she doesn't pick the original Priscilla's family today, she can avoid some of the misfortune that was destined to happen to her. The Pope said to Priscilla that he was glad that she was in a good mood, and Priscilla replied yes, and it was a good day. The Pope smiled and said that he was glad to hear that and asked if they shall begin. Then he suddenly announces to let the candidates in. And so the candidates come in, and Priscilla was telling in her mind that she thinks she has a rough idea of who they were, but she doesn't know them. And the one she was waiting for was, and all of a sudden a man entered and Priscilla was staggered, suddenly ran forward, and the Pope and the elders asked where she was going and what was going on. She was looking at the man and said that it was him. She didn't care what anyone says, and she decided from the moment they first met. She called the man a daddy, and the man was shocked and asked who she was. Priscilla was saying in her mind that in her new life as Saint Priscilla, she will adopt him as her father. And she will devote herself to her favorite character. The elders were really shocked and asked what was happening. That was outrageous and he will never allow it. And said for their beloved saint to be sent to that wicked Emperor Melkiade, that was absolutely unacceptable, and they were pleading to the Holy Father to reconsider it. Priscilla was just smiling and telling in her mind that she didn't think it would be easy, but the elders were more stubborn than she thought. What should she do? The elder was asking why was the Emperor Melkiade on the candidate list in the first place, and they can't send their noble lady to such a villain. Elder Dominic said an apology to Priscilla, and the selection of the saint's family was a very sacred ritual. And as that ritual was deeply meaningful both historically and religiously, the consequences of disregarding the process like that was unacceptable. Priscilla was telling in her mind that she knew that, but she still can't leave her fate up to random chance. Not only that, it was a randomizer that manipulates the odds. The outcome of that seemingly random draw was actually predetermined. You were sent to a horrible family that can ruin a child's life in an instant, and in the original story, Priscilla's adoptive parents were also chosen by manipulation. And when she thinks of Priscilla back then, she still feels frustrated and she can never let that happen. She smiled at the Pope, and the Pope was turning his head back not to look at Priscilla, and Priscilla was asking if he was angry. And then the Pope said that those selected in the ceremony have a sacred and great duty to show the world to the saint who will bear the future. And to protect the saint from the world, and in the process of doing so not only the procedure but also other detailed matters. They will have to be carefully considered and decided upon. Then he turns to call on Priscilla and asks if she has something to say to them. And May he asked why she chose him. Priscilla was thinking that now was the time, and she finally had a chance to convince those people. She, a mere 6-year-old saint, will convince those proficient popes and elders and prove the legitimacy of her choice. Then she answered that well, she heard a voice. The elders were really shocked, and Priscilla said additionally that she could definitely feel it. As soon as her daddy entered the cathedral, her vision brightened them. A kind and gentle voice said that he was the one. The elders were staggered, and they were looking at Priscilla shining up, and they were thinking that it was the prophecy, and said that they will pray together. Priscilla felt happy, saying in her mind that it was a success. Well, she had similar experiences, so she can't say it was a complete lie, and it was called a fan accident. Therefore, merciful God forgives her humble lie, for she wants to be with her favorite. And in that world, there was only one family she wanted to entrust her life to, and that one was the Melkiades. Melkiade was talking to someone and asked what he said and could he say it again. And the Majesty was the father of the Saintess, and that one speaking was Duke Aquilo Grandblian. Then he suddenly shouted, "Will the Holy Empire of Bias now walk the path of destruction?" Melkiade told him to shut up, and he was just as confused as he was, and how the hell did that happen? He didn't come there to be the father of the saint, and Duke Aquilo was pleading with him to be honest. Then suddenly asked Melkiade if he didn't threaten the saintess, did he? And even if he was a villain of Juan Mucci, that was a bit much, and Melkiade was getting angry and replied that he told him to shut up. And anyway, the visit that was scheduled for 3 months will be finalized in a week, and the Duke was shocked and asked if that means he was coming back soon. Then he asked the Majesty if he was not going to refuse the saintess's proposal. They were just staring at each other, and all of a sudden the guard beside the door stood coughing, and the Duke called him in a name called Ian. The guard replied that about that, His Majesty actually was the one who offered the saintess, and he was looking at Melkiade, but Melkiade was looking at him, getting angry. And so he said that it was nothing, and the Duke was shocked and said that he can't just stop talking in the middle of a sentence, and asked what happened between His Highness and the saintess. And all of a sudden Melkiade turned off the call and said that someone was there and they will talk later. Then all of a sudden someone entered and said greetings to the Majesty. Melkiade and the saintess arrived. Priscilla was hiding on her nanny's skirt, then she took a peek to look at the Majesty, and all of a sudden she ran forward and called the Majesty a daddy. Priscilla smiled and said that her grandpa said that she can come to see her daddy. Melkiade was just looking at her, staggered and silent. She was looking at Melkiade and thinking that it looks like Melkiade was in a lot of trouble, cause he was so stiff. And he was so adorable, and now she sees why she was so obsessed with him. And all of a sudden Melkiade asked Priscilla who was her father. The three of them were really shocked, and Melkiade said additionally that she have yet to recognize her as his daughter. Corleone asked the Majesty how could he say such a thing, Her Highness was still young, and why would he go so far? Then Priscilla told Melkiade not to worry, and it was okay, and he recognized him, because she was the one who adopted him, then suddenly asked if she did well. Corleone was staggered and the Majesty, and then Priscilla said additionally that actually that was a secret, but she thinks grandpas still don't like her daddy and they say he was not qualified. But it was okay, she was stronger than them and she will protect her daddy. Corleone cleared his throat and said to His Majesty that he was fortunate to have such an understanding and supportive daughter. Then Melkiade asked Corleone if he wished to die today and Corleone answered no, and Corleone looked at Priscilla and he suddenly blinked and Priscilla was shocked and smiled to Corleone and saying in her mind that Corleone was always so supportive. Melkiade said that those lunatics at the Holy See finally said something right for once. Priscilla was staggered and the Majesty said that they were right, he was not worthy to be her father, so go back. The Majesty pushed them back outside the door and Priscilla was really shocked, telling in her mind that it can't be. She was already at the church saying that she doesn't understand. The Melkiade she knew was surprisingly bad at taking things head on before making up his mind to reject him so bluntly like that. Above all, how can he even reject him, and she was like a blessing in disguise. Even if he just stayed still, wouldn't he have a saintess and a way to keep the Holy See in check and favorite can't be that stupid, and asked just why. Luciana said that perhaps it could be that he was worried about her. Priscilla was asking about worried about her and Luciana answered yes, if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't be so adamant about taking away her position. Priscilla asked why he worried and Luciana said that she was not sure, maybe he might have felt a sense of responsibility. He might have not felt confident in raising her well, or maybe a saintess might have made him feel incapable of being a good father. Priscilla was thinking and telling in her mind that she never thought of it that way and it was possible, but it was not like Melkiade to feel that kind of responsibility. Rather than that, he might have hated having a family to begin with and he might have had a distaste for things like family or love. So how should she solve that predicament? If she refuses now, she really doesn't think there was any other way. She should just pretend to be crazy and cling on to his legs and tell the truth, or should she negotiate that she can help him since she knows the future? And all of a sudden somebody knocked on the door and said that the Holiness wants to see her Grace, and Priscilla was a little bit worried and thinking about it. The Majesty was waiting while sitting on the chair, but then he went outside and walked in a little. He was throbbing, saying that he was so sick of the headache and he thought it would go away if he got some fresh air. He was thinking that he needed to calm down a little before those sensations go haywire, and so he decided to walk a little more. Then he suddenly saw something hanging and it was Priscilla asking for some help and Melkiade was asking what was that kid doing there, a novice priest fleeing at night. Then all of a sudden Priscilla was going to fall, but fortunately the Majesty caught her. She was really scared and the moment she opened her eyes she staggered and asked if she was alive. Melkiade put her down and she said thank you for it, and they accidentally stared at each other and Melkiade saw Priscilla's red eyes. Then Priscilla called him Daddy. Melkiade was asking her who her dad was and Priscilla laughed and said Daddy to him. And she said additionally to just wait a bit, she promised she will come and get him soon. Melkiade was already inside and thinking that at the time, he thought Priscilla was just a weird kid. He never thought he would be chosen as a father by a saintess and he never thought that he would be in that situation. The Holiness said that from the beginning and Melkiade suddenly said that they should have appointed someone else as her guardian. The elder said that the selection ceremony of the saint's guardian has always been decided through a sacred and fair process, and there was no precedent for anything quite like that. The other elder slammed the table and said that from the beginning, the decision to designate Emperor Melkiade was a mistake to begin with, and the other laser replied and asked if now he was overruling Her Holiness's decision. Priscilla was thinking and asking if it was a complete mess, wasn't it, and she was screwed and what should she do? Melkiade was just sitting on the chair listening to them arguing and Priscilla was really amazed, saying in her mind that Melkiade was so handsome, no wonder he was her bias. Then she held on and said to herself that now was not the time for that. It was a serious situation and she should focus. The elder at the side said to the Pope that despite that being Her Holiness and his will, he didn't think it was right to approve an unqualified person as the guardian of the saintess. Since the start hasn't the Northern Empire always been hostile toward the Holy Empire? And the other elder replied that it was right. Let such an unbeliever like Emperor Melkiade take Her Holiness, And what if he does something terrible? Priscilla was staggered and said in her mind what a shameless, and they were the reason Melkiade became an unbeliever. According to the original novel, the Holy Empire was involved in the death of the previous emperor. They also openly opposed Melkiade's succession to the throne, and they didn't even send an ambassador to bless the coronation ceremony, and they completely ruined the relationship. Not that they have done that, they were trying to drive Melkiade into a corner, and they should have a conscience, and her favorite might kill people sometimes, but he was not a bad guy. The elder said that it was a difficult situation, but that doesn't mean they can ignore the prophecy entirely, right? The other one replied that well, no, so, as a reasonable alternative. How about they appoint Duke Ravenhook, who was also from the Northern Empire, as Her Holiness's guardian? Priscilla was really shocked, heard the name Duke Ravenhook, and she said in her mind no other elder said that it was a good idea, since Duke Ravenhook was also from the Northern Empire, and he was the younger brother of the Emperor Melkiade, so they were practically family, and the other elder replied that it was right and what a wise move it was. Priscilla was really annoyed and angry, and she never wanted to be with that man. Duke Ravenhook was none other than the one who destroyed Priscilla's life at the hands of her adoptive family. And she was asking why was the plot turning back like that, and was choosing Melkiade not enough to change the original story. And that can't go on, she has to change it somehow. Then she suddenly shouted to everyone to wait, and Melkiade said that the more he listened bullshit, the more he was disgusted by each and every one of it. He had already been patient for long enough, and if that was all they had to say, then there's no point in staying there any longer. Melkiade stood up and was going to leave, and Priscilla was saying in her mind no, and asked if Melkiade really going to leave like that. And don't leave her there alone, and she needs to stop him somehow. She came up to something. She suddenly ran in front of Melkiade, and all of the sudden Melkiade lifted her up and said that she was his daughter. Priscilla was shocked, and even the elders were really shocked, and Melkiade left together with Priscilla. Priscilla was looking at Melkiade smiling. Melkiade put her down, and she was calling Melkiade a daddy, but Melkiade was not listening to her. She suddenly laughed and still calling Melkiade a daddy, and Melkiade was asking in his mind why did he do that. It has been a long time since he had been involved with the Holy Empire. It was to be expected that the elders would come out that way. He wasn't exactly happy about the adoption, since he didn't want to be associated with the Holy Empire in any way. But more than that, that sad look on Priscilla's face he didn't like. He was still asking why, and Priscilla was still happy and laughing, saying that word, she's my daughter. She was really happy, and Melkiade asked was that really good, and Priscilla answered yes. And her daddy was so cool, and he was like a hero. Melkiade was thinking about the word hero, and it was really funny. He was not even her father, and he was definitely not the kind of cool hero she thought he was. He was asking in her mind how many times has she seen him to give him that such limitless trust, and were all kids like that. Priscilla told him that it was okay and she wouldn't bother him. She will never throw a tantrum, and she will make sure he never regret having her as a daughter. Melkiade was mesmerizing that on the subject of children Priscilla spoke as if she was trying to prove her worth and asking if she was afraid of not being chosen. Then he suddenly poked Priscilla's head and Priscilla was hurt. Then he said that he didn't care about that. Priscilla was staggered, and Melkiade was turning away and telling in his mind that he never thought he would be someone's father. Then he told Priscilla to follow him. Priscilla happily answered yes, and Melkiade was saying in his mind that well, having one wouldn't be so bad. Priscilla and Luciana were walking, and Priscilla asked was that it, and Luciana answered yes, that was right. Luciana said additionally that it was the residence of the first paladins. The knight commander named Benjamin said that it was an honor to meet her, Her Holiness, and asked what brings her there. Luciana answered that Her Holiness wishes to see a knight, one who will accompany and escort her to the Northern Empire. Then the commander knight answered that he would suggest. Then all of the sudden Priscilla said that she wanted to see Ludwig. Commander Benjamin was staggered, then answered that he would summon Ludwig right away. Ludwig of the Holy Sword, despite having no fraction to support him. An ill-fated genius who managed to become a brilliant paladin with a single unwavering belief. In the original story, he took on various odd jobs before meeting Priscilla by chance, and from then on, he became her bodyguard. but the loyal knight eventually gave his life on behalf of his master. And she was telling in her mind that Ludwig gave his life to protect Priscilla. This time, she will not let him die. And then suddenly she heard a voice said, "Well, to think he would meet her there." The moment she turned to look, the man asked what brought her all the way there, Her Holiness. She was really shocked, and the man was Duke Ravenhook. In person, he was just as unlikable as she thought he would be. To think she would run into him there, and what an unsightly human being. When she reread the original, she even skipped all the parts where that trashy dad appeared, and she hated him. Duke Ravenhook was going to reach on Priscilla, but then all of a sudden Luciana blocked the Duke's way and pleaded to show some respect to the Saintess. Duke Ravenhook smiled and then bowed down and said an apology, and he was late with his greeting. To the first light that illuminates the world, he offers her his greetings. Priscilla was mesmerizing in her mind that originally, the greeting was so burdensome, so she told everyone who came to see her not to do it, but seeing that humans do it makes her feel better. And of course, that doesn't make up for what happened to Priscilla. Duke Ravenhook was asking in her mind what it was common sense to accept a greeting and let them stand up, and how long she was going to make him kneel. And he was getting annoyed and asked if the kid was doing it on purpose. Then Luciana called Priscilla and suddenly blinked at her, and she was thinking that, well, she thought that was enough kneeling. Then she nodded to Luciana. Then Luciana told the Duke that he may rise, and her apology. It seems that Her Majesty was not used to interacting with people. Duke Ravenhook rubbed her hands together and said that he didn't expect to startle Her Holiness so much. And he just wanted to introduce himself in advance since they were about to become a family. Priscilla was asking in her mind who was his family, and Duke Ravenhook smiled and said that he will be her uncle soon. Priscilla was saying in her mind that she never had an uncle like him. Then she was really annoyed, saying that her mouth was itchy, and cursing him on their first meeting was probably a bit much. Knight Benjamin already coming, then he said Her Excellency and the Duke, he brought Paladin Ludwig. Priscilla was amazed, and Benjamin said that he didn't expect His Highness to be there, and Duke Ravenhook replied yes, and it was certainly fortunate to have the opportunity to meet the future Grand Master of the Paladins so soon. And if he doesn't mind, can he talk to him for a moment? And Benjamin answered that it would be an honor. Priscilla was saying in her mind that he had got some business with the Knight Commander. Then the Knight Commander told Priscilla that then please have a word with Ludwig, and Priscilla was shocked and asked in her mind if they were planning something foolish. Then she hoped not. Then Ludwig called her and said that it was an honor to meet her, Her Holiness. Ludwig said that he heard she called for him, and Priscilla answered yes, and she had a request. Ludwig replied that there was no need to ask, and he will do anything she says, just give him an order. Priscilla asked if it really was, and she was thinking if that was the case. Then she suddenly asked Ludwig if he would become her knight. Ludwig kneeled and answered yes to her grace, and it would be a great honor. He, Ludwig, will serve her with his life. Priscilla was mesmerizing that he can't give his life again, and she was doing that to save his life. Well, she doesn't know if Ludwig will really give his life for her, in that life. But the point was, she wanted to save him. Ludwig gave his life to save Priscilla, at least in this life. Ludwig raised his head up, then Priscilla was saying in her mind that it was good, and she will take care of him from now on and protect him. She already came back to the palace, and the maids were happily saying good morning to her and asking how she was. She was saying in her mind that it was a busy morning. Perhaps it was because she was moving soon. Since Melkiade wanted to hurry things up, their departure was pushed back 2 months ahead of schedule. Every day was a busy one, with basic studies, meetings with the Pope, but there was one thing she never missed on a daily basis. Then she saw Melkiade and call Ian, and so she ran and calling her daddy. Melkiade lifted her up, and she was saying that her daddy was looking good today and asked what he ate for breakfast handsomely. And her daddy must be a hybrid, he was half angel and half Rahelian. She asked Melkiade why his name was Daddy and how cute it was, and Luciana answered that Daddy is not a name, and Melkiade said that it was enough. Melkiade asked, by the way, what she was doing at this time of the day. Shouldn't she be praying at this time? Priscilla smiled and said that he knew her schedule, and his daddy loves her after all. Then she suddenly said that she actually have a request for him, and Melkiade asked about a request. Priscilla was pleading to give her a name, and Melkiade was asking why does she need a name. Before the saint could depart from the Holy See with Her Highness, there was a ceremony to put her name on the divine list as a sign of returning to the arms of God. Luciana said that she would like His Majesty to give her the name that will be used at that time. Melkiade asked if she already had an original name. Luciana was going to answer, but then all of a sudden Priscilla called her daddy and said that she actually didn't have a name. Melkiade asked if she didn't have a name and what she meant. Priscilla was saying in her mind that he had ruined the mood and she was smiling on purpose cause she didn't want that to happen, but there's no way around it and Priscilla didn't have a name. And so she told Melkiade that she didn't have an official name because she was born in the slums of Kavara. Everyone called her child or you, hey or something similar to that. Priscilla was abandoned at birth and didn't even know her parents. She grew up in the hands of an orphan hostess and later was sold for a single potion. It was natural for a child who doesn't know her name, how to read letters, or the world she was living in to have any idea of her newfound life as a saint, but at the age of 6 that day came. The day that she would perform a miracle and become a saint. Every saint receives a gift from God at the moment of awakening. At the same time of receiving the gift of memories of a past life, Priscilla, who gained abundant divine power, became the saint of the Bias Empire on that day at the age of 6. After becoming a saint, she was always referred to as Your Holiness or Saintess, so she didn't receive an official name until she was adopted and departed. Well, she was the saintess not, but for some reason, she can still use the divine power of that body. Also, where did Priscilla's soul go? Even though it was her body now, there's still a lot she has to learn. Then Luciana suddenly said that all information related to the saintess's origin was a national secret of Bias. Her Holiness wishes to receive a name from His Majesty even if it meant revealing the national secret, that's all she can say. Melkiade was thinking and suddenly said okay and he will give her a name. It was already evening, and His Majesty was still awake thinking about Priscilla and said to him that he was the best. So happy and have always wanted a name just like her daddy. He suddenly smiled and said what a cheeky brat, mesmerizing about no name and asking who would dare think that a saint would not have a name. Thinking that everyone was born with a name in this world. And what would it take for someone to not have something that basic? He thought that her being raised in the Holy See meant that she had everything she needed. He was asking if he was mistaken, then he called Corleone and asked if there was any progress on the temple investigation. Corleone answered that it was nearing completion and they should be done by tomorrow. And there were more places open than expected, so there was no problem with the investigation. Melkiade said right and asked about the thing they were looking for, then Corleone answered that they couldn't find it. And so Melkiade said that in the end, it was a waste of time and they must have moved it somewhere else beforehand. And he thought that their holy relic would be there, but where did they put it? Nowhere that he can think of. Then Melkiade asked what Valentino was doing and Corleone answered that it seems that Duke Ravenhook was in contact with most of the people in the Holy See and he must be. Melkiade said yes, he must have wanted to be the father of the saint. So the rumors that the Senate and the Pope had joined hands were not false. Then he told Corleone to tell Aquilo to increase surveillance of them both and Corleone answered yes to His Excellency. He was thinking about Ravenhook as his beginning to show his intentions for the Northern Empire. Still, this empire or his life doesn't matter to him. And he was tempted to throw it to Valentino and see what he did, but a major obstacle arose. He didn't want to give him that cheeky kid and she asked him to give her a name. He called Corleone and Corleone answered yes and Melkiade said that there's somewhere he needs to go. That's all for today, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Until next time.